The U.S. Department of Energy's Oak Ridge Reservation is the site of a vital national defense facility and a modern computational and scientific center. But over the years, parts of the reservation have been contaminated with radioactive and other hazardous waste. DOE has been busy cleaning up those affected areas, but much remains to be done. Citizen input is a valuable part of that effort, and DOE welcomes advice from the Oak Ridge Site-Specific Advisory Board, a citizens panel that provides independent advice and recommendations on DOE's cleanup of the Oak Ridge Reservation. The board provides input on a wide range of environmental cleanup operations underway at Oak Ridge National Laboratory, Y-12 National Security Complex, and the East Tennessee Technology Park. You can be part of this important work by attending the monthly meetings of the Oak Ridge Site-Specific Advisory Board. For more information, call or visit our website.
Please make sure your cell phones are turned off for the meeting. And tonight we have Brian Henry. He's going to be a regular speaker here. Next month, he's also going to present the evaluation of ongoing groundwater efforts. Do we have any comments from Melissa?
I just want to apologize for Dave Adler and Jay Mullis. They couldn't be here tonight because they're on travel. Mm-hmm. I don't have any specific comments. I did want to say that last week we had a public meeting on the proposed plan for EMDF, and so Brian will be giving us more information about our ongoing efforts for waste capacity. But that's all I have.
Okay. Thank you. Connie?
No, I don't have anything either.
Okay. Brad?
No, not aware of anything that needs to be brought to the attention at this point.
Okay, thank you. Shell, you want to introduce our speaker?
I can. I didn't know I was going to, but I can. So tonight we do have Brian Henry with us, and he is going to present on the topic of the ongoing efforts to assure sufficient waste disposal capacity. Brian, I don't have your bio in front of me, so I apologize to not share that information, but if you would please welcome Brian.
Thank you. I'm always challenged a little bit with this clicker, so we'll see if it works. Thanks again for having me. As Dennis mentioned, I have been here a few times this year and probably will be here a few more times through the coming year. But tonight I'm going to talk again about all of our efforts that we have to ensure that we have enough disposal capacity to support the ongoing cleanup mission here in Oak Ridge. So I still like your map on the wall better. So if you haven't went back and taken a good look at the map on the wall, that's a great map that kind of shows the different sites. But on this slide, you can see the Oak Ridge Reservation outlined in purple. That's about 34,000 acres, give or take. And we have 3 large sites where most of the activity for DOE and the missions go on. That's out at ETTP. That mission has ended, but EM is fast approaching the cleanup of that site to be able to transition it over to the private sector. This site, the East Tennessee Technology Park, is where the majority of the debris and the waste from the cleanup of that effort has went to our existing environmental management waste management facility. And I'll talk a little bit about that. The Oak Ridge National Laboratory is the world-class DOE facility doing world-class research. I think where I saw they were just got the top supercomputer again, so they're always near the top of that list. Y-12 National Security Complex has a vital ongoing national security mission, and that's the ongoing missions of those 2 facilities are key to Oak Ridge's continued success, and so we're very fortunate to have those 2 sites and their ongoing missions. Scattered across the reservation, we do have some waste disposal facilities, and I'll show you a little bit more in detail. We have some sanitary industrial landfills just south of Y-12. We have our existing environmental management, waste management facility just to the west of Y-12. And this is the preferred location for a new low-level radioactive waste disposal facility that we'll talk about. That's the proposed EMDF. So, you know, we look every year and evaluate both the work that we have going on now and the work we are projecting in the future to make sure we have adequate on-site disposal capacity. We are fortunate to have, as I mentioned, a suite of landfills, starting from a construction demolition debris landfill to industrial landfills that are very similar to municipal waste landfills, moving up to our low-level waste disposal facilities. So right now, with the permitted capacity at our permitted landfills that I'll talk more about, we're in pretty good shape. What we do is we build those out as necessary to support, you know, the next 5 years or the next 10 years, but the capacity is fully permitted for those. Our existing environmental management, waste management facility, it's more than 70% full, and that primarily supported the cleanup of the East Tennessee Technology Park, as I mentioned. The sanitary landfills are permitted by the state of Tennessee. They have operating permits. Our existing low-level radioactive waste disposal facility, environmental management, waste management facility, and I'm going to stop saying that long thing and just say EMWMF, and the new proposed low-level radioactive waste disposal facility, EMDF, are both being done under CERCLA. EMWMF was constructed back in about 2002 and became operational. We'd like to have EMDF operational in the mid-2020s. And, you know, one of the things for each tier and each landfill, there are specific waste acceptance criteria on what waste is suitable for that particular facility. And then, you know, to be suitable for disposal there, it has to meet that. And I'll talk a little bit more about that as well. So this is Y-12. In green, you see our current operating landfills and waste disposal facility. Here in light blue are some closed landfills. Landfill 7, and some of you are going on a tour. I noticed we had a good turnout for the tour, so we'll go by that tomorrow. We'll go by these two facilities and this facility and the proposed location for the new facility tomorrow afternoon. These are about 2 million cubic yards each, as is the new disposal facility being proposed. They're all about 2 million cubic yards. This is a classified industrial landfill. It takes the same type of waste as landfill 5, except, you know, if there's classified equipment or materials, they can go into landfill 4. And I've got a picture on that in a little bit as well. These are closed and capped, and several of these have been closed and capped for decades. So, as I mentioned, we have TDEC permitted facilities. Anytime we make a change or construct a new phase, there we work with TDEC to get the plans approved. And I'll talk about, we just closed Area 1 on Landfill 4. Prior to doing that, we had to go to the TDEC office, and they had to approve our plans. And then as we're doing the construction, they'll come out and oversee it, and then they approve the construction. So these 3 landfills all have TDEC permits. They all take non-radiological, non-hazardous waste. You know, the construction demolition debris landfill, that's the lowest tier, and that has the most strict waste acceptance criteria. That's generally clean demolition debris, clean soils and rubbles that go into that landfill. The next step up are these 2, landfill 4 and landfill 5. Generally, they're constructed the same. They have the same engineered features, and they take the same type of waste, with the exception, as I mentioned, is if you have classified matter or equipment, it goes into the classified landfill. As Melissa mentioned, we are in the planning process for a new CERCLA low-level waste disposal facility. That public comment period is open at the moment, and it runs through December 10th, and I'll talk more about that later as well. So as we're cleaning up these different sites and the different facilities, we generate primarily debris. When we go to take down a building or clean out a building, pre-demo activities, pre-demolition, we'll go in and remove all the loose equipment, all the loose structure, and that gets disposed of before we actually tear the building down. So when we can, our first choice for removal of that equipment and removal of some of the steel and or the other precious metals is to recycle that material. Now, for DOE's purposes, if it is radiologically contaminated, then we don't recycle it. But where we can demonstrate that the material is clean and can be reused, that's our preference. And that minimizes the amount of waste being disposed of. After that, we start and look at the construction, demolition, debris, and the industrial landfills. And part of our process for any project that we execute here on the Oak Ridge Reservation for cleanup is we work with EPA and TDEC to make sure we're doing the proper sampling and characterization of that project, of the debris, of the equipment, to make sure we have good information that demonstrates that that particular waste stream is suitable for the disposal facility, the landfill that it's going to. If it doesn't meet the WAC for the industrial landfills, if it has radiological contamination, low-level radiological contamination, or hazardous materials that don't require treatment, then it can go into our existing environmental waste management facility. And once we get the new one up and operational, which is necessary for the cleanup of the Oak Ridge National Laboratory and the Y-12 National Security Complex, it will take basically the same types of waste as our existing low-level waste disposal facility. And, one thing, and you guys have probably heard this before, but we generate by volume a tremendous amount of debris and soils and waste. Most of the high contamination, and it's not high-level waste, but the higher levels of contamination, we segregate those out, and those are actually shipped off-site, such that the majority, greater than 90% of the hazard goes to the off-site facilities, and the majority by volume and the lower hazard stays here on-site and is effectively disposed of on-site. There will always be, as we move forward, some portion of the waste that gets shipped off-site to different commercial facilities. So as I mentioned, we do have permitted facilities with TDEC, and the capacities are fully permitted, but they're not all fully constructed. So you're seeing a picture of Area 1 on Landfill 4. The permitted capacity of that facility is about 80,000 cubic yards. It's much smaller than the others. We did an expansion of that facility about 2 years ago, and it's separated into Area 1, which was built, I think, back in the 80s, pretty early on, and then the rest of it was built out in the 90s. When we expanded Area 2 to accommodate some of the debris coming from ETTP cleanup, the state wanted us to go ahead and close and cap Area 1. There was a little bit of space left there, but Area 1 wasn't built to the same standards that existed and came into being in the 90s. It wasn't lined, it didn't have a leachate collection system, so we agreed to cap Area 1, and we just finished that this month. And so prior to capping Area 1, we went to TDEC and got approval of the cap, and then as we're executing the work, TDEC comes out and inspects the work that we're doing, and then signs off on the final closure of that. That was about a $2 million project to cap Area 1, and it was a fairly small footprint. So you've heard me mention EMWMF, which is our existing low-level waste disposal facility. It opened, I think it started construction back in the late 90s, and I think opened in 2002. If I got that right, or got that wrong, somebody can tell me. These numbers all jumbled together after a while, but it's been operational for about 16 years. The actual footprint of the waste is about 28 acres. When you add in the support facilities and all that stuff, you're getting closer to 60-acre footprint. We did work with EPA and TDEC to get an approval of a design change on the cap, of the conceptual design change on the cap. That's going to allow us to add about another 140,000 cubic yards. And so our capacity for EMWF has moved from 2.2 million to 2.3 million cubic yards. And we'll see that on the tour. If you haven't seen it and you're going on the tour tomorrow, we'll go by this facility too. And one of the things, this picture here that shows the black membrane, that's what we call an enhanced operational cover. And what we try to do with that is we try to shed clean water away from the landfill as much as possible so that we're not dealing with as much contaminated water. And that's been a real success with the enhanced operational cover, and you'll see that. So I mentioned both the Oak Ridge National Laboratory and Y-12 National Security Complex have enduring DOE missions, and they have active facilities, important mission essential facilities, mixed in with a lot of dilapidated, old, contaminated buildings. And the focus starting in 2020 is going to shift from finishing the cleanup at the East Tennessee Technology Park to moving over and cleaning up Y-12 and ORNL. And to be able to do that effectively and in a timely manner, we need the new disposal facility up and operational in about the mid-2020 time frame. I mentioned before the proposed plan is out for that for the new environmental management disposal facility. The public comment period was extended through December 10th, so anyone that wishes to do so can submit public comments through then. We did do, as we worked with EPA and TDEC on moving forward on the new EMDF facility, there was a desire to get some additional characterization data. And so we went out in our first phase of characterization data. We put in 16 well pairs, or it's 8 well pairs, 16 wells. I've got smart folks over there, so if I say something wrong, just, kind of point me in the right directions. But I think it was 16 wells, 8 well pairs. Is that correct? Where we're basically, when we're installing those, we get information on the soils that we go through, the bedrock that we're going through, hydraulic conductivity, and then that gives us also information on where the groundwater is in those wells or piezometers. We have also started working on phase 2 characterization. That work is underway right now, and I've got a graphic that'll show you a little more. The purpose of that information is more to inform the design. It also moves out into the areas where we're going to do support facilities and borrow areas, and gets into the initial seismic testing as well. And we do want an overlap of about 2 years between the operations of EMWF and EMDF. The purpose of that is you have some waste streams that really need to be on the floor of the cell. So, as you're filling up one disposal facility and you're getting near the top, there are some items you don't want to put on the top. So we need the other one open so we preserve that capability to have floor space to put those types of waste streams that don't belong up near the top. So we're shooting for an overlap of about 2 years. So Bear Creek Valley is right here. Y-12 is over in this general area. If you're familiar with the spallation neutron source, which is an important ORNL user facility, it's located here. And here is the preferred location of the new low-level waste disposal facility called EMDF. And that information is in the proposed plan as well. I mentioned we're doing a lot more outside. This is the footprint of the waste for the new disposal facility. This is the limits of construction, and this is the area where support facilities would be located, and this is a potential borrow area. So initially in phase 1, we focused on putting some wells and piezometers and getting groundwater and surface water data in this general footprint. All these red and all the extra stuff, and down here along the road where we need to reroute the road, this is all information that's being collected as part of phase 2. So to site this facility at its preferred location, we will have to reroute Bear Creek Road, which is a paved road leading into the Y-12 site, and also our haul road. We are very fortunate here on the Oak Ridge Reservation both to have a large reservation and to have dedicated roads that waste from ETTP, waste from ORNL, and waste from Y12 can travel from the demolition project sites through the Oak Ridge Reservation to these disposal facilities without ever going out in the city of Oak Ridge or onto public roads. As part of the testing, they also take cores, and that allows us to document what's found in the bedrock. I think, and I think it's next, but I've mentioned before, you know, we encourage public comments. That period is open to the 10th. The responses to all of the public comments we received during the proposed plan public comment period will be addressed in what's called a responsiveness summary of the record of decision, and that will be out sometime next year in 2019. So here's a video that says it better than I ever could, so we'll start that.
Option for several key reasons.
The Oak Ridge Environmental Management Program's primary mission is to clean up the East Tennessee Technology Park, Y12 National Security Complex, and Oak Ridge National Laboratory. Together, these sites house hundreds of facilities that require demolition, which will generate a large amount of contaminated debris and waste. To complete this work, there must be an engineered facility to dispose of this material. In 2002, a disposal facility was constructed for soil and building demolition debris generated primarily from ETTP cleanup. This existing facility will reach its full capacity in the near future, creating the need for additional disposal space to complete cleanup at Y12 and ORNL. As the EM program planned for future cleanup, it determined that on-site disposal for much of the generated waste was the best option for several key reasons. First, EM has demonstrated that it can ensure safe on-site disposal using engineering features and strict waste acceptance criteria. For more than 15 years, Oak Ridge employees have safely operated its current facility without negatively impacting human health or the environment. Second, on-site disposal avoids huge costs. The cost burden of off-site disposal would slow or pause cleanup operations, impacting local employment and allowing risks to remain that threaten human health and the environment. With on-site disposal, more funds are available for projects that reduce risks and advance cleanup at Y12 and ORNL. Third, it minimizes transportation risks and uncertainty. On-site disposal only uses a private designated road on DOE land, known as the haul road, and it eliminates the risks associated with tens of thousands of truckloads traveling across the country on public highways. Also, on-site disposal is not impacted when other states change policies that could restrict the relocation of waste. When considering on-site disposal options, EM examined 16 sites as potential locations for the new facility. After years of evaluations and reviews, the Department of Energy, the EPA, and the state of Tennessee proposed that the Central Bear Creek Valley option was the best location. This site offers the many criteria needed for this facility and enough space for the remainder of Oak Ridge's cleanup waste and debris. Above all, the EM program will construct and operate this facility safely. The Central Bear Creek Valley site is nearly a mile from the nearest resident. It is separated from the local community by a tall ridge, and groundwater in the area flows away from populated areas. The EM program will only place low-level waste in this facility. The highly contaminated waste is separated at the cleanup sites and shipped off-site for disposal. These off-site shipments material accounts for roughly 10% of the total volume, but contains approximately 90% of the contamination. Additionally, the proposed disposal facility will use several design features to protect the surrounding environment. First, crews will construct 15 feet of protective liners and geologic buffers before waste is placed in the facility. Then, when the disposal facility is full, another 11 feet of clay, liners, and cover soil and grass will be placed over the waste. Together, these features are designed to isolate the waste from rain and groundwater, resulting in an environment protected from contamination. Any water that comes into contact with the waste during disposal operations will be monitored for contamination. If needed, that water will be treated before it is released back into the environment. After the facility is closed and capped, the area will be monitored for as long as necessary to ensure protection of human health and the environment. Oak Ridge's EM program expects the project to be approved in 2019, with the goal of accepting waste at the facility in the early 2020s. This facility will enable the demolition of unneeded, dilapidated, and contaminated facilities at Y12 and ORNL, and support the modernization and mission growth at two of the department's most valuable science and national security sites.
All right. So that's it, except for questions.
Yes, David.
Yes, sir. On the resin that's in your land, over how thick is it and how long will it last?
I'm sorry, you say the
Yeah.
geomembrane?
Yeah. Yeah. Give him the microphone.
Okay.
Over the
I want to say 60 to 80 mil. Is that the geomembrane that's in the conceptual design is 60 or 80 mils thick, and different tests on that material indicate it will last hundreds of years.
Okay.
So there's the literature. I don't know the specifics in the literature. I think there's some that says it's liable to last more than 500 years, but I think hundreds of years is accurate.
Okay, thank you. I just didn't want it to be biodegradable. Thank you.
Rudy?
Yes, sir. On page 8, where it shows the liners being installed, basically that's just before the soil is placed on top of it. Correct, sir? On page 8. Keep going. One more. Right there on the left-hand side.
Okay, so
Yeah.
what's happening?
I mean, that just shows the liner, but there's going to be soil deposit on top of that. And then,
Actually,
there's
going to be, the 11 feet that we talked about.
Right.
That comes on top of this. Underneath that black fabric is about a foot, 1 to 2 foot of clay.
Yeah.
And that may be part of that, maybe a foot of that may be part of the 11 feet that goes on later.
Right.
But this is a temporary
Right. It's just
operational.
temporary right there because
Correct.
you don't want any
Just to
rain
shed the
impacting
water.
and go in there. Correct,
Right.
sir. In relationship to the EMDF and EMWMF, where's the walk-in pits located? Is it between those two and that won't have any negative impact?
The walk-in pits.
Yeah, because that was capped and closed.
So I'm familiar with the Bear Creek Burial Grounds. Is that
Right.
is that what
No.
we're talking about?
No, the walk-in pits area.
Okay, it's part of the Bear Creek Burial Grounds.
Yeah, is that
It's in
still
between.
west? Oh, it's in between
Yeah,
the
so
two?
if you,
Okay.
let me see if my green pointer will reach that far. Let me see if I can see.
I mean, that's not going, basically, you had to site the new one farther away from the current envelope to get away from the walk-in pits area.
That wasn't a factor. I mean, we couldn't site it in that location, but
Right.
if you look back here,
Yeah.
the existing one's in this area. Here are the Bear Creek Burial Grounds, and the new one is about here. So
Right, so it's a fair distance away from the walk-in pits area.
Correct.
That's been capped already.
There have been some RCRA caps placed on that. There's still, future cleanup actions that'll be
Sure.
associated with that whole area.
Sure, okay. Thank you, sir.
Okay, Richard?
Brian, the you mentioned the debris that you were holding off, that you, for whatever reason, that you don't want to put on top in the existing, and you're waiting for the new one, kind of put it at the bottom. Is that debris? Is that waste being stored right now, currently, or are they waiting for the landfill, the new landfill, to be built before they continue with whatever this debris is?
So right now, for EMWF, we do have a lot of floor space that's unused in Cell 6. We constructed Cell 6 3 to 5 years ago. I don't remember the exact time, but we've just started putting waste in Cell 6. So the floor of that will last us for some time. So our plan is to, when we run out of floor space in EMWF, to have floor space in EMDF. And that's generally really large, heavy pieces of equipment. But we currently do have floor space because the Cell 6 has not been used very much.
Thank you.
Back to the caps that you were talking about on the older burial grounds. Are they closed? There's no intention to disturb them? Are they done? We're not going to try to go back to them and.
So that decision has yet to be made. That's we have decades of cleanup left here in Oak Ridge, and we will be having those discussions on the Bear Creek Burial Ground with both EPA and TDEC on what has to be done there. What's the final remedial action for that area? But that's sometime in the future. We do monitor we monitor groundwater and surface water throughout the reservation and throughout Bear Creek Valley.
And also, you mentioned on the runoff for EMWMF, you treat it if necessary. And what constituents are you looking for, and what sort of treatment?
So we have a what's called the Liquid Gaseous Waste Operations Facility at ORNL that treats liquid waste, liquid water that has radioactive or chemical hazardous constituents in it. So at EMWMF over the years, we had a long list of things we monitored, both radiological and chemical constituents. I think within the last year or two, based on 15 years of not finding a lot of them, we routinely sample for a much smaller list that we expect to find. And then every year or every 2 years, we again do the full suite of things. But it's both radiological and chemical. If we exceed the discharge criteria, that is trucked. Right now, all of the leachate that's collected at EMWMF goes to what's called LGWO, the Liquid Gaseous Waste Operations Facility over at ORNL. And if the contact water were to exceed it, we could ship that over there as well. We haven't had to treat any contact water for at least 5 years, if I recall, but we do have that capability.
Okay.
Sarah?
Thank you. I don't know if this is a question for you or if this is a question for someone else that's here, but I remember in one of my first initial tours, there was discussion about how TDEC would be given a certain amount of money for the current waste facilities, or it's being put aside in case the EPA or DOE wants to step away from the project. Is that going to be increased at all with this new landfill?
So I'll speak first, and then I'll have to defer to Brad in case he wants to add. First of all, DOE never will step away from its responsibilities here, but there is $18 million that went into a fund for EMWMF for future actions if they're necessary. Our discussions on the new disposal facility, in working with EPA and TDEC, the state didn't necessarily want to do that again for the new disposal facility, so I'll have to let Brad take over from there.
Yeah, Brian is basically correct. There was the 18 million plus or minus that's there for the current EMWMF facility. For various reasons, the state really does not want to have that type of trust fund for the future landfill. As Brian said, that will be a DOE responsibility in perpetuity.
And again, I consider us fortunate here in Oak Ridge to have the enduring missions of the Oak Ridge National Laboratory and the Y-12 National Security Complex. That further ensures that DOE is going to be here in the long term and be here to take care of these responsibilities.
Melissa indicated you might bring us up to date on the public meetings and what you may have learned there. And I'm also curious about what's going on with City of Oak Ridge regarding their input.
So we had a couple of poster sessions. I don't remember the dates, where we had some posters for display and invited the public to come and talk about those. TDEC, in partnership with the Sierra Club, had a poster session and invited the public to come talk and ask questions there. We did have the formal public session a week ago, this past Wednesday, and Dave Adler gave some information, and then we heard from the public. So all of that information was recorded. The City of Oak Ridge was one of the commenters and expressed their concerns. We have, even for the last several years, been working with the city to keep them up to date on the progress on this particular facility, and they've expressed their concerns throughout the last couple of years. It hasn't just been at the public comment session. So the public comment session is still ongoing. So, we had a decent turnout. I don't know the numbers. If I were guessing, around 100 people at the public availability session. There were a number of folks that expressed their concerns or opinions, and we recorded all that. And as I mentioned, we'll take all of the feedback from the public sessions and put responses to that in the responsiveness summary of the record of decision. I don't think that, it was the first one I'd been to on a DOE project. I think it fell within the range of our expectations. So.
Given the concerns that to date TDEC has expressed, I guess what's DOE's strategy for dealing with those? Some of those seem to be pretty serious, and your design includes things that TDEC doesn't normally approve. Are you hoping to demonstrate through the additional data you're collecting that maybe you should get a waiver, or are you thinking you'll probably redesign it, or how's all that going to get resolved,
sure.
I guess?
So we've had lengthy discussions with EPA and TDEC on this and the particulars of the landfill. Essentially, at this point, from my perspective, being an engineer and project manager, we're at the conceptual design stage. And so we've got information, and once we move into the ROD, we move into preliminary design and final design, and then we have what's called a remedial design report. That's where we get into, the nuts and bolts. Having said that, I think the phase 1 characterization data was really important to be able to continue having discussions with both EPA and TDEC on, what are the groundwater conditions, what are the surface water conditions, where are we going to design the landfill such that, the waste is well above the groundwater and it's well isolated from the groundwater. There are a couple of what are called ARRs, applicable, relevant, appropriate requirements, that any site you pick on the Oak Ridge Reservation, you're not going to meet and we're going to require a waiver. For instance, there's a TSCA requirement of having 50-foot separation between the high groundwater table and the bottom of the waste. That is not a performance requirement. That's a strict separation requirement. There was a waiver granted for EMWMF. There have been waivers granted for that for other commercial facilities. And what that regulation is essentially about is making sure that once it's constructed, operated, and closed, we have the necessary separation between the waste and the groundwater. So we'll continue to have those discussions with EPA and TDEC and take into consideration all the data we've collected in the past, all the data we are collecting. If we need to make design changes as we move into preliminary and final design, we'll do that as well. But DOE is committed to ensuring that during operations and post-closure, we will maintain the adequate separation between the waste and the groundwater.
Thanks, Mr. Henry. Good presentation. Say, couple questions. This is to the things that John has mentioned and also Bonnie about hydrology. I was at the public meeting and it was a good percentage of questions based on the hydrology. Also read up a little bit on the comments from TDEC. And out of the 7 points I make up front, 3 of them deal directly with hydrology. Now, the thing I don't understand, or it's not clear to me, is that you're going to do the remedial investigation and the feasibility study soon, right? You're
Well, that's already been done. It was not approved by EPA or TDEC, but that we did 5 versions of that, spent more than 5 years at that stage. Right.
So it hasn't been approved by the regulators?
It was not. That was a part, we've moved into, as part of the CERCLA process, there are, if documents don't get approved, there are processes to go through informal dispute, and then there are processes to go to formal dispute. The 3 agencies went to formal dispute on the RIFIS, the Remedial Investigation and Feasibility Study, and all 3 agencies agreed to move forward with the proposed plan. And part of that agreement was collect the phase 1 characterization data. And that data that we've collected will inform the discussions that will lead to the ROD signature.
So when in the process does the information that come in the RIFS impact the design or the conceptual design, I guess? Does it come too late, too early, or just on time, like the?
Well, I wouldn't say that the information in the RIFIS impacts the. I mean, there was a conceptual design in the RIFIS based on the information we had. What the information we gather moving forward, including the phase 1 characterization and the phase 2 information were collected, and phase 3 will continue to collect information. What that will inform is the actual remedial design that EPA and TDEC will have to approve, and on our side, that's preliminary and final design. So
it really, the information comes on time?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Because the RI has a lot of information in terms of hydrology, not only the subsurface water, the surface water, the way it moves around and all of that, right?
Right.
Which is essential for the design.
Yes.
Okay.
And I can tell you that the preferred location we're at now, one of the biggest drivers to moving to that location was states' concerns on hydrology. So some of the attributes of the preferred location is it basically is physically separated from the ridge. So there's a lateral break between water that's stored in the ridge. So there's a saddle between where this waste facility will be located and the ridge. On both sides, there are tributaries that serve as natural drainage for the groundwater. And then on the southern side, you've got lower areas and Bear Creek. So essentially, all around this facility, there are nature-made points for the groundwater to come up and the surface water and drain around this facility. They also make natural drainages for all the surface water to flow around this facility. So once we cut off the recharge by constructing the landfill of that area, then, basically you've got good paths for all your surface water and groundwater to go around it. As I said, we'll continue having those discussions with EPA and TDEC. There are still some areas of disagreements on data, what the data means, and so we'll continue to have those discussions moving forward.
And another question, if I may, and this deals with the waste acceptance criteria. When does this come in time?
So we, through an agreement with EPA and TDEC, we're going to put waste acceptance criteria in the record of decision.
Okay. All right. Thanks a lot.
Sure.
Bill?
The area surrounding the field itself, are you going to have monitor wells surrounding that?
Yes.
Is it quite a number, or is it just a few? Or?
Yeah, I mean, the number, we'll work with EPA and TDEC to determine the right number, but that's part of, that's part of the defense in depth of a RCRA facility is you have to do monitoring, ensure you have enough buffer to do corrective action. So, we will continually be monitoring these facilities and having a
Do they have some that's further out then to monitor further out?
Well, we have lots of groundwater monitoring wells in Bear Creek Valley. As you know, and as someone mentioned, we've got other waste disposal facilities out there. So we have a large network specific for EMDF. One of the things we'll be starting, I think discussions, we'll probably start with the regulators in, late this year, early next year. We go through what are called data quality objective sessions with EPA and TDEC to say, okay, for our baseline monitoring, the first thing we'll do out and do is do some baseline monitoring around the facility while it's clean so we can establish the baseline of what we expect to see there. And then, as we move closer to construction, we'll work with EPA and TDEC to say, okay, once we're constructed and operational, what is the right number and what are the right locations for the monitoring wells that you're talking about. So those decisions haven't been made quite yet. We have a number around EMWMF. I want to say 18. I was going to say 15 to 20, so.
Yes, sir. You're also going to have a down gradient leachate collection system as well, correct?
Yeah, there's a leachate collection system underneath the cell, and then there's a leak detection system underneath that, and all that water is collected. Right. That's absolutely correct.
Okay. That needs to be made clear.
Yes. I'll make sure I say that more often.
Because some people think, well, that's it. Without that there, saying, I think that's maybe why Bill maybe had the question.
So does the Sierra Club have all this information?
I can't speak for the Sierra Club. So.
Well, it didn't sound like they did the other night, so that's...
Okay. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Are there any members of the public who want to comment? As a Citizens Advisory Board to the Department of Energy on environmental cleanup, we want to encourage the community at large to attend and participate in our board and committee meetings. If you are unable to attend, please send in your questions and comments to the address shown. Appropriate comments and questions will be read during the public comment section of the SSAB meeting and will be given the same consideration by the board and DOE as those given in person. Meeting schedules and ways to communicate with the board can be obtained by calling 241-4583 or by visiting our website.
Thank you, Olivia. This concludes the public portion of our meeting. You're more than welcome to stick around if you wish for the regular meeting that we have on a monthly basis. Are there any additions for the agenda this evening? Seeing none, can I hear a motion to approve the agenda? Second. Show of hands to right hand to vote on approving the agenda. Okay, thank you. I don't see any residual action items that we have to review this evening. Just a brief comment. There's been a significant amount of information that Shelley and Sarah have been sending out. Please take a look at that. There's some new information in there, DOE's proposals for the definitions of low-level waste as well as high-level waste. That are coming down the pike. And all of that is being supported also by the Energy Community Alliances. It's not like they're devise that all on their own. There's a good collaboration with the cities as well.
Have you looked at it?
Mm-hmm.
Have they, is there a, is it marked in such a way that we know what the changes are?
I think the definitions, yeah.
Okay,
Changes
okay.
in the definitions, yes.
I just wondered, I haven't looked at it.
Yep.
Dennis, is it still based upon the percent enrichment or not?
There's some of that in there, but also some of the changes are where the changing the criteria from instead of where the waste came from to its actual definition of radioactivity and such.
Okay, because that's, I could never wrap my arms.
Fair enough.
I'm getting readings. I was told it was low level.
Richard, the old minutes?
The meeting minutes, I've looked at the meetings, or the minutes from last month's meeting, and they, I will say that they are an accurate representation of what transpired, and would ask for a motion to approve.
Second.
It's been seconded. Can you show a vote of, by raising your right hand? Approval of minutes from last month? Thank you very much. Melissa, is there anything new?
We don't have any open recommendations at this point. I did want to bring up the fact that we are looking for new members. We've gotten a few applications, but if you know other people that might be interested, please let them know. We're still taking applications up until January 16th, I believe. January 16th. So, but earlier is always better with the holidays. So, but that's all I have. Thank you, Dennis.
Okay, thank you. Committee, let's move on to committee reports. EM stewardship, Leon.
Brief overview of the meeting for October the 24th for the EM board. There was a discussion about the continuation of the EMDF meetings that we attended last Wednesday, and that would be open until December the 10th. Ms. Noy spoke a little bit about making sure we understood the guidelines and the requirements and the responsibilities of the board for the Vision 2020. Again, the discussion for the New Hope meeting on November the 7th, TDEC, Christoph was very gracious, sent us out several different informative sheets that we had requested. I think everybody got that from Ms. Shelley and Christoph. There was some discussion about the TDEC well sampling of the various areas. Christoph had commented on some of that. Next meeting, November 28th at 6 o'clock. Very quick meeting.
Okay. Thank you very much. The executive meeting was postponed. We all attended the public meeting instead, and very informative, very insightful to see the various input from different members of the public. There were different constituents there representing Oak Ridge, obviously, the Sierra Club, Roane County overall, and then a number of concerned citizens, especially the environmental committee from Oak Ridge as well. So all that information I know has been gathered, as Brian mentioned earlier, and all of the questions that have been proposed will be in the ROD, answered in the ROD. Are there any other additions to the agenda? Ed?
Yeah, thank you. See, I'd like to request from DOE, if I could, a summary a summary version of the CERCLA or Superfund process.
Okay.
I know things have changed from CERCLA to Superfund a little bit, and I'm still a little bit in doubt about what step follows, and what's the next step that follows the. For example, we are wrestling with the EMDF.
Mm-hmm.
The proposed plan, the conceptual design, and all of those steps. I'd like to know what CERCLA says really about it. Not the law, but the I'm sure
Is it
something that EPA,
The process.
the process is used.
And you don't want to know all the legal wranglings. You
Yeah.
want to see a summary if it's all possible?
Right,
Okay.
if it's possible.
Mhm.
Either as a presentation or just a summary report to us, right?
Like a summary sheet.
Cliff's notes.
I think it'll help us in terms of going where we are, what we need to do for the next bit, you know?
Mhm.
Thank you.
Sure. Good suggestion. Anything else, David?
I've got a question. A request for Melissa. Is there any way that we could get a sample of that membrane? I'm very fascinated with it, that it's going to last 500 years or around there, and I like to see what it's constructed from, or how it looks, if it's just plastic or if it's a weave, or...
I'll have to check with the project. I don't know that we're going to have samples available, but I will check.
And they may be a piece off at the end of a row or something they could show us.
Okay, thank you, David. John?
Melissa, Shelley or somebody, is the tour still on for tomorrow regardless of weather conditions?
Yes, we'll have a bus, so, and a lot of it will also just be indoors with some presentations. So even if you have to stay on the bus, Brian can still discuss.
So see you at about 12:45 tomorrow. That way we can get all our badges and everything lined up and be ready to go at 1. Okay? Yes. Over at the New Hope Center. Pardon me? Yes. Leave your phones in the car. It's a good one.
Yes. Do not take your phones with you. If they find them on you, you'll lose them.
Okay. I'd like to adjourn the meeting. Thank you for all your trouble this evening making out in this lousy weather, but it worked.
The U.S. Department of Energy's Oak Ridge Reservation is the site of a vital national defense facility and a modern computational and scientific center. But over the years, parts of the reservation have been contaminated with radioactive and other hazardous waste. DOE has been busy cleaning up those affected areas, but much remains to be done. Citizen input is a valuable part of that effort, and DOE welcomes advice from the Oak Ridge Site-Specific Advisory Board, a citizens panel that provides independent advice and recommendations on DOE's cleanup of the Oak Ridge Reservation. The board provides input on a wide range of environmental cleanup operations underway at Oak Ridge National Laboratory, Y-12 National Security Complex, and the East Tennessee Technology Park. You can be part of this important work by attending the monthly meetings of the Oak Ridge Site-Specific Advisory Board. For more information, call or visit our website.